I thought I'd try something a little different. Pardon me while I fix this here. I want to do a walkthrough of Blue Book. It's a project I've been pretty excited about for a while. Um, and all 5 issues of the first story arc are out now. So I just want to kind of flip through the issues with you. These stories are pretty well known, so I won't say that there's actually spoilers here. Um, but I will sort of avoid parts of the last issue because the way James wrapped up the story is very character based, very much about Betty and Barney, and I found it really moving. Um, so yeah, I just kind of wanted to walk you through the issue and just kind of talk about some of the stuff. And let's see how this works. I don't know if I'm gonna dig this or not. This is one of the earliest versions of any of the art that I did on here. Maybe it was probably like the third or fourth piece that I attempted to sort of just get the feeling of what the series was about. Um, and first of all, like my interest in the subject goes back way back to my childhood. I was born in the early '70s, so like I grew up watching a lot of In Search of reruns, Twilight Zone, all that sort of what if aspects of film and television, and of course, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was just this huge, giant impact on my psyche. Now, whether or not I actually believed in this stuff, I couldn't say. It's funny. I've been so into the subject and the sort of what ifness of it that it wasn't until a few years ago I actually really was hit with that question: do you believe in aliens or visitations or whatever? And I realized that the subject itself was so compelling to me. I never really stopped to ask myself, do I actually believe that this is happening or not happening? And I found that much more interesting than the question itself. Was, this obsession with this field and this sort of, I mean, I think what it comes down to is part of my psyche is most of the things I'm interested in are things that take me out of this current world. It takes me out of this time and place. UFO stuff is like that. All the fringy stuff is like that. I'm a big fan of history and archaeology. Again, it brings me out of the time I'm in now and into another time and place. So I think that's much more important than anything else because the ultimate answer to questions about stuff like aliens or whatever is yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think it's silly to argue all the ins and outs of the thing. But anyway, one of the other things that I'm interested in is people's stories. I've never had a personal experience, but I know people who have, and they seem very sincere. People that I love and trust, who there's no reason for them to lie to me about any of it. So I find the human stories behind these super interesting. My own mother had an experience, and it was really interesting. I don't know if we printed any art from that in there. One of the earliest pieces I did was the shot of somebody just pointing up at a triangular light in the sky. And very quickly, my mother's story was her and her sister were walking home from a bingo night once. This is like in the 60s or 70s. And my aunt is legally blind. She can't see very well at all. And the thing that struck me about the story when my mom saw this triangular thing in the sky was my aunt saying, I couldn't see it, but I could tell from your mother's voice that something had shook her and she believed what she was seeing. So it's those kind of personal stories that I find really interesting. And I was hoping with Betty and Barney Hill, not only because of their age, there was a connection to like an older generation, like my parents and my mom, my aunt, but that personal connection and how it seemed to affect their lives and what was at risk of going forward with these stories and making yourself seem crazy, especially like an interracial couple in the 1960s. And, there's just a lot at risk and stuff. So anyway, those are the general stories of why this all interested me so much. James Tinian asked me to be part of this during the early days of the Substack. And I think because of the format of Substack, we were able to do a really crazy thing that normally this kind of comic wouldn't fly. It would be very difficult to do this sort of just as a straight comic. But because of the format of Substack and it made it easier to be able to do this wonderful comic that Dark Horse put together. The production team is amazing. We had we were kind of guided through this whole thing with Greg Lockhart, who was our editor for all of it, up until it came to Dark Horse, and then it was Daniel Shaban, who I work with a lot. Our letters by Didier Badekar are just fucking amazing, pardon my language, and pardon my pronunciations for anybody's names who I'm screwing up. I'm not sure exactly how to say Tinian's name either. And yeah, so here we go is the first page. One of the things that we did early on too was these pages, if you got them digitally, they were taller. So some of these pages we used the digital format to be able to give a sense of height and to the pages. But then we cut it down for this. Doing in 1950s. I forget what year this actually takes place, late 50s or 60s. Pardon me, where they're in a diner, and that was a lot of fun. Just doing the body language of the characters, do they have their jackets on and taking them off and putting them on? The sort of dirty looks that the nurse gives over their interracial relationship as they're traveling, which was part of the book and the story that they were telling. Okay, it was 1961. They had to be concerned about where they were staying as they were traveling. The sort of sundown towns and all that stuff is a thing. This was the illustration I really, really liked. This was some of the stuff I was really looking forward to doing in the book, was dropping out a lot of the line work. Here we go. And kind of doing a little bit more of an illustrative thing. And the obvious influences on this would be Darwin Cook and Michael Cho. A little bit more Cho than Cook, to be honest. When Blue Book came up, I just saw in my head, and so did James, exactly how it would be executed with this blue tone, which Cook has done amazing things with. There's also this sort of color shape stuff with one or two colors that Michael Cho has done. I mean, they're both sort of dipping out of the same influences of illustrators from the 50s. And if I was a more educated artist, I could list those kind of artists for you. But I'm self-taught, never went to an art school, and just kind of study things as I went along. I wish I knew more and had a deeper depth of knowledge for this stuff. The cars, let me tell you something. I cannot draw cars. I technically can, but it is such a frustration for me that I almost always use a Google SketchUp model, some sort of 3D model. I will draw out the characters first, pick the shots off of like a screen grab or something, and then bring that onto the page digitally, and then I'll trace it. And I make sure that when I'm tracing it, it's more like almost like a circle template to draw a planet or something freehand. You're just using that template, that basic breakdown, not extremely literally, and you can see all the imperfections here. I'm not trying to recreate a perfect car from the model. I'm just trying to make it look like my style of art. Part of that isn't just the amount of effort you want to put into something. Maybe somebody may think I'm just being lazy, but this is a time thing. This is one, two. These are 4 illustrations. Often there's 5 to 6 panels a page. So those are literally 5 or 6 different illustrations you're doing every single day to move along. So I am not afraid of using whatever tools are available to me. This was a lot of fun, was trying to do some reflection stuff. Just using opacities, and I created another level on here where I made the moon and such. A lot of fun with just these black shapes and shadows. What not to draw is so much fun. This was great. I mean, what I really loved about this page, what I mean by great was it felt great was, there's only 2 faces on this whole page, and everybody else is in shadow. It was really fun getting to draw the dog. I'm not good at drawing animals either, even though I'm drawing a book completely made of animals right now. But I've kind of find my own way to make things look like me. These are my favorite kind of panels, just these blocked out shapes. It was a lot of fun doing the binoculars and having the light come through the binoculars onto her eyes. Our first shots of the aliens, I thought this was a lot of fun to do. This sort of like negative space creeping across the moon, and even how it's a negative on a negative here, and then reverse the negative. So, You know, the shadow of the ship comes over them. This is one of my favorite shots in the whole series. In fact, I even recreated this for a cover, or I feel like I've done this. I just recreated the shot later in the comic. Doing these texturings was really fun as well. So I'm only using 2 tones of blue, and I'm using very little other sort of effects. Like there's a few blurring effects in the whole book, which is something I don't do a lot in general. In fact, I almost never use a blur effect. But I thought in this particular certain circumstances, for this particular set of rules and limited things that I wanted to do on the page, that it would be fun. But yeah, this sort of texture that I did to cut out on stuff. You know, I went a long way here on different effects. Aditya's lettering here is just great, so simple, so perfect. This took a lot of work to figure out, to kind of bend the reflection around the page or around the car, but it kind of worked out. I was pretty happy with it. These big shots of ominous, trying to capture the feeling of what it would feel like, this what ifness of this unworldly thing facing you and what that would feel like. This becomes my favorite part. So we've used all this blue, and I've made like a rule that I'm really only using 2 tones of blue. I think in very few cases there might be a slightly like a third tone, but that's only if I kind of just made the wrong choices and I can't really figure out how to make that contrast work. Or in a few special effects shots where there's like kind of a foggy kind of spacey look to things. Pardon me. But then I knew this was planned the whole time, was that at some point you turn the page, and like this sense of horror will just like hit you in the face really hard. This sense of shock, this shocking image that is suddenly on the page. We've gone from all of these like very naturalistic surroundings of trees, familiar surroundings of the cars and jackets and people and a diner, and then bam, there's these aliens, and then there's this just he gets a close look at them, and when he looks at them close, it's just like hell on earth. It's just so shocking. And this also feeds into James's story and into Tinian's stories, that like Betty's recounting of her experiences were very different than Barney's. Barney's experiences were horrifying to him, and to remember any of it was traumatic. You know, there are these horrible recordings of him reliving it, and he's just screaming. He is screaming his mind out, and like he was reminded of. I'm not sure if we tell it here. I think later in one of the other issue when he does like some regression, there's a story about him hunting rabbits, and he feels like he's a rabbit being captured right now. Plus, there's everything that was going on in the '60s. I can't imagine what was going through his head, like everywhere he went. Yeah, it's just must have been pretty traumatic for him. Then we get this amazing backup story by Klaus Janson, one of my heroes. He's so amazing. And that's our first issue. And here we go, issue 2. This was a lot of fun. I did like this light blast that comes here from the ship, and I dropped out a lot of the line work except for, let's see if I can get this to focus, sorry. Maybe it's focused, I can't tell. My eyesight's so bad. I dropped out all the line work except for like around his eyes, so I kept it solid black there so that his eyes would really stand out. That's the attempt anyway. Again, I just love this lettering by Aditya. It's just like how the shape of the fonts that he used here feels like the sound, just thin and sharp. You know, a lot of fun here with light refraction, and reflection. Like here, right here, just the interior of the car lighting up. It's the only white on the page or that panel. A lot of fun here blurring the white, making kind of a glowing effect. More great lettering choices here. I purposefully, so at this stage, they start to get hypnotized. They talk about their approach to the UFO, and their time starts to warp and their memory starts to warp. So, starting with this panel here, I stretched things out. I'm not sure if you can tell. Like I stretched the image. I just inked it regularly, and then I just pulled the images for all of these panels. This whole page, I just elongated it. And then here, as their bodies start to sort of morph and mix around, it's harder to see. But in here, I even have their bodies overlap because there's this like kind of messed up accusation that Betty was purposely trying to sort of incept Barney with the memories of this thing so that she could write this book or some crazy stuff. A sort of less malignant version of that is just that simply her wish to have this have happened to her, this extraordinary experience. She subconsciously influenced Barney. I think it's all BS. But that's why I kind of had their image overlapping. And then like they kind of black out, and I thought it'd be interesting to just do this big like kind of like I don't know. I just felt like this captured the image of them kind of blinking out of reality or their minds collapsing. And then we slowly come back. Again, it's great lettering as the beeping sound that they're hearing in their head slowly goes away. And they make their way back home. I really, really enjoyed these pages here. Again, I hate drawing cars, but like these setups really felt good. Like I was very pleased with the way these came out, and especially this. Like it's kind of hard to see, but there's all this detail in here of the woods and the forest back here. I think I took a couple of different photos and put them together so that I can get a sense of like how different textures would pop up in a forest because I was just kind of doing the same thing everywhere, and then I realized, oh, but then there's going to be different sections of different parts of the mountains and stuff that will just make it look different. I don't know how to. I'm not explaining that well, but photo reference is great for that. It just gives you a different idea of how to approach something. Clouds are really fun. I'm doing clouds in like 3 or 4 different ways, and I really wish I would make up my mind. But I like this effect here of just taking some white textures and sort of cutting away at the bottom of it. This is something I've always liked when you're looking out clouds at night, and far off in the distance, there's something else lighting them from below. I was really pleased I was able to capture that. More with this clouds and opacity stuff. Again, I really had a good time with this, and I felt like I accomplished something nice here. A lot of my art, I feel, I don't want to say functional. That sounds horrible, but like I'm telling a story, and like I'm not into the illustrative part of it. I'm more into clarity and contrast. Clarity so you understand what's going on. Contrast so that it has impact. So every now and then I'll do something like this, and it's simple, but I don't know, very pleasing to me. Then I made a big shift into this stuff, so that we go from the actual experience, which is kind of dark and horror filled. And I did all these pages analog, meaning I drew them with pen and paper, thick brushes and stuff, ballpoint pens, microns, and kept a lot of black on the page. When we go into the modern times now, I made this purposeful idea to like make a huge shift. So it becomes lighter, and I'm drawing it all digitally. So the line work is much finer, it's more controlled, and I used a lot of white borders, and this just opens up everything. So now, like when he's waking up here, everything feels different. It contrasts so strongly against those darker pages. It's like he's in a different world that he's waking up to. That sense of like a blinding light waking him. And I do a lot more of dropping out the line work here, so you get just more like shapes contrasting white against the blue as opposed to lines defining everything. This was a particularly difficult page to draw. The idea is that the car has been magnetized after their experience, or the trunk of the car. So she takes this compass and puts it out on top of the car where she sees these little weird markings on the car, and then the compass starts to spin. So she puts it on, and it's spinning near these little marks. And then she takes it off from there, puts it over to here. Actually, I probably should have had her hand moving. Right now it's moving right to left. I should have had it going the opposite direction. left to right because your eye moves left to right. So then her hand is going against the movement here. So it would have been better if she reached up to here and then down here. Anyway, so we see here the compass is not moving. And then she moves it back and it starts spinning around again. Because it's magnetized from some experience, maybe. I also really, really enjoyed doing the shadows. This is something that we did in Murder Inc. with Taki, where we had these like tree shadows going over people's faces, and there's some gradation to it. Tree shadows and like light breaking through leaves and stuff is something I want to try to do more of. Now we get into sort of, this is really fun. I really, really enjoyed this. This is something I want to do more of in general, which is almost like a journalistic style comics. So it's a little less panel to panel storytelling, and it's more the telling of events, and you're jumping from panel to panel instead of a same action being in the same movement. You're going from place to place. And here it's Betty is calling military and journalists trying to get answers and stuff. So we're leaping from these different pages, different locations and stuff. And I really like this sense of like, here we're talking about Major Downell E. Kehoe and get to just draw this one illustration. It's just one panel is about him as we move on to these other locations. And then we come back to it, back to their home and more panel to panel traditional narrative storytelling. So it's really fun jumping back and forth between the two of them. This is another panel I was really happy with. Actually, this whole page, like her expression here as she's writing to the Air Force and she's really into it. He's in the shadows because he's not so into it. He'd rather leave all this stuff behind. And just the body language between them, I was really happy with. This is the stuff that I really strive for. It's not my illustrative quality. It's this stuff. You know, it's how you can see their relationship and their love and doubt and everything all wrapped up into one thing. At least I hope, and I feel like that's what I was able to pull off. And again, just another full. This is a little more illustrative for me, and this was like, I was really happy with it. And then our backup, The Green Children. This is a particular story I've always been obsessed with, and I've only become more obsessed with. And after doing this story, I've created a whole new series that I'm going to do at Dark Horse based off of this. But I can't say too much about it until then. So this is a story about during the medieval times. I think it was during 1138 or something like that, or 1150. There was these kids that just showed up in this town, and they were green. Their skin was green. Their clothes were green. They couldn't speak the same language and stuff. And basically, the thought was that they were some sort of somehow came over from the fairy realm or something. And there's a story about them, and I just really, really enjoyed doing this stuff and drawing medieval things, and you know, kind of following the Blue Book print where it's just this, everything's done in green and gray. Lots of fun. So that was issue 2. I'm going to move along a little faster here so that this isn't taking forever. Third issue. I remember by this time it was getting difficult figuring out to do covers because we're following a lot of the same story at this point, and it's Betty and Barney in their car, UFO images, and we have all these wonderful alternative covers. And I remember having a conversation with Dave Johnson, who's a good friend of mine, and I consider him a mentor from my early days. And yeah, we're just trying to figure out like what. You know, we kind of did all the designs. You took all the elements and mixed them up as much as possible. So this kind of feels like the last, like this was just such a desperate attempt of me to put something together that made sense. This was a lot of fun. Going back to Betty and Barney Hill's story of their experience, and they see these weird guys on the side of the road. The weird guys kind of transform into these aliens. Here's some of the blurring effects I was talking about, which I feel works for here. I wouldn't normally use it, but it worked well in this spot. This was a sort of the other third big element here. So we have things are drawn in blue. The analog versus digital scenes. The red color that will show up occasionally. And then zipatone, or the Bend-Aid dots. Right? There's so many different names for these things. I only want to use the zipatone effect around alien stuff. So we'll see this only pop up in the book when we're dealing with aliens. I don't think I really was applying that in the first issue. Now that I think about it, like the alien stuff there didn't have the zipatone effect around it that really showed you this is something that stands out. Like that's the purpose of doing something like that, and keeping it contained to a very specific set of rules. Was I wanted to show that this is specifically only for the alien stuff. It stands out of this world as different. Back to a combination of, there's a few panel-to-panel shots here, but it's also very journalistic where we're jumping around in time and places and location. This is when Betty and Barney first start to see a therapist about this stuff. Now here's the shot I kind of recreated again I was talking about earlier. I always felt like if there was a version of this film that Tim Meadows should play Barney Hill, a comedian, but I think it would be great to see him in a straightforward role. He's about the right age now, too. Although, actually, Barney was pretty young during all this. He looked much older because he was just having a hard life. Yeah, it's pretty rough. I really felt for him as I was reading his story. Him and Betty. Yeah, the characters just really, really grew on me. And this is fun. This is a sense of like their reality is just falling away from them. More psychedelic stuff. This is where Barney's first talking about his experience seeing the aliens was, he was talking about when he and his brother were younger, they were hunting rabbit or playing with a rabbit. They were just trying to capture it and like the look of fear in the rabbit's eyes. And I love that James caught this moment and grabbed it because it's just so visceral, so feral, the sense of being captured. In fact, that was the name of their book, was Captured. Another psychedelic warping of the image up here. This was a lot of fun. You know, I just used these patterns and then pulled back or stretched and molded the image. Here's Barney during his sessions. There were these recordings of him just flipping the fuck out. He was just screaming. You really feel for him when you hear it. Another panel, this one I cheated a little bit and I went purple. Again, to just give it this other sense of otherness. And he's talking about in his head, he's hearing these voices from the sort of commander or leader of the aliens. So I wanted it to stand out. So I went a little purple there. Had fun with the hallucinatory feelings of like everything is glowing and he's kind of in and out of his body. Same thing here as he's driving away. He's recalling memories and they're unclear. So I wanted the imagery to be unclear as well. Fun shot of aliens. Here they are under their hypnosis. Really like this image, this like psychedelic image of the creatures coming, their reflection and shadows sort of creeping over the windows. Again with the zipatone here, now we're in the spaceship. So I want to give it a sense of it doesn't belong here. It's in a different place and time. I think that's a pretty effective vibe. And that's the end of that first issue. I like this face. And let's see who the backup is in here. Lonnie Nadler and Jenna Cha, if I'm pronouncing those correctly. Hopefully. Their backup story. This is really creepy. Kind of horror filled. I mean, here you go. Very fitting for the book and its tone and everything. Let's see. 4 and 5. This was really fun. So there's this image that's going to come up in the book where Betty is reading this book that the aliens gave her, and it has this weird map and stuff, and I felt like this would make a good cover image. Sometimes the cover images are informed by the interior pages. Like, so if the interiors are done first, often they will give me the idea of what I should do for the cover. And in later issues, I've really gotten into that sort of retro recreation of a panel as a cover. Again, with some zipatone fun. This is the medical examination Really happy with this, with the way this came out. Obviously, I used a lot of reference material for actual examinations and pedicures because they were like looking under the nails. I'm trying to figure out how do I show somebody looking under the nails, and these are all fun problems to have and to try and figure out. And again, with the zipatone, make everything feel otherworldly and evasive and scary. These glowing effects, I think, are really fun throughout the whole thing because it gives that kind of like, dreamy, glowy effect. Really weird stuff. What's interesting when you pay attention to the UFO lore and mythology, how it evolves over time. And even this story, which is this sort of quintessential alien abduction story that informed so much of what we know about and so many of the patterns that we've seen, have these weird outliers. Like there were books in this alien ship. Why would there be books? I don't know. Maybe it was some sort of imprint on her mind. I don't know. Pretty sure this is Aditya came up with this as well. The alien language. I don't think I did that. There's a really interesting story about this star pattern that she remembers, and she has somebody else build. And many years later, this star pattern was discovered to actually be there. So that many people look at this as proof of something have happened because she brought back some knowledge that was unknown then, was proof later. My battery's about to die on my phone here, so let's skedoodle along. More of the zipatone. He's telling her about where she's coming from. And again, this stuff sort of pays off later, of this information that she's bringing back. A lot of fun with overlapping imagery because, again, these are all memories that she's not crystal clear on. She's pulling these up through hypnosis. So I want reality to sort of bend itself. A little bit of cheat of color here because this is the alien like zipping away. This is last moment, so I wanted it to stand out. And a final issue. I'm not going to show you the very end of this because, again, I want to preserve what James wrote, which I think is really beautiful. This is more of her journey. Again, this is about the idea of their minds overlapping. This one therapist is kind of saying that they were influencing each other, like feedbacking off of each other's experience or made up psychosis or whatever. It's kind of interesting, kind of insulting. I'm not down with it. I don't know what really happened, but this idea that like she was some sort of, manipulator, bugs me. Had a lot of fun with these backgrounds where I'm just not drawing the images, but just drawing negative shapes. Barney getting teased at work, who's harassed about all this stuff. People come out about their UFO stories. Nowadays might be taken a little more seriously, but back then it was just cruel. It was a way to destroy your career and your reputation and everything. We'll flash back to the fear in his eyes because as people are showing him, look, this is you. You're this freak who saw this UFO stuff. You liar. You weirdo. And so he's getting a flashback to being trapped. A lot of fun with the modern day times, open line work, the white panels. Really want to show the two of their stories, their love story, how much they care about each other, how much about all this is really just about the two of them. I really became close to their fictional characters and who they might have been in real life. A lot of fun glowing effects here. This is an astronomer woman who, Marjorie Fish, she helped figure out this star pattern that she came back with that turned out to be real. Here's arguments between Carl Sagan and some others who are talking about the pros and cons of alien life. I think this is as far as I'll take it back. This is Betty outlives Barney. We get into a little bit of that towards the end, but this is more about how she got involved with the UFO community, and she's had more sightings after this, and how she sort of has always looked to the stars, hoping to see more or to have another big experience. She did have other sightings with other people. And again, as she got older, she really reminded me of my aunt and my mother. In that kind of the way she dressed, and she looked like another person going to bingo and stuff. And I mean that all in a loving way. Grew up in bingo halls. So I think I'm going to leave you off here. This is the last issue, and you know, kind of James really wraps up their experience with their relationship and who they were as people together. So I've had a great experience on this. We're doing more. I'm currently working on the Kenneth Arnold story. So there's many more issues of this coming out. This is the first 5 issues. They're out now from Dark Horse Comics. I hope you enjoy this. If you have interest in UFO stories, you can leave a comment below. If you're just interested in the art, feel free to comment. If you want to see more of these videos, let me know. I'll walk you through this stuff. Try not to be too spoilery. Give you my thought process of what I was trying to do. And yeah, I hope you check out Blue Book from Dark Horse. The whole crew is working really hard. We're all very proud of it. And that is it for now. So thanks so much for your time, guys.